we are joined right now by Steve Rhodes of Mastering Probability. Of course, he also hosts the Trader's Edge show on 11 a.m. Eastern Time right here on TFNN. Strongly recommend checking both of those things out. I've got to say, you know, I read these newsletters every day. The Mastering Probability issue from this morning was fantastic, but then he also just had an update as of 2 p.m. and I was reading through that a little bit earlier once it dropped, and this is just, it's some fantastic stuff, and I really recommend checking it out. You can go to the newsletters tab right on TFNN.com. You can see right there on the top right-hand side, Mastering Probability newsletter by Steve Rhodes. Strongly recommend checking this out. Very thorough. I love the write-ups he does. For me, when I'm, trying to decide what kind of position to take or what move to make, I really want to know kind of all that I can about it. And Steve does a very good job of putting a lot of good stuff in his analysis. Steve, how are you doing?
And thanks for those kind compliments.
Absolutely.
You missed the last night's newsletter, though, that I sent out before the futures opened, where I suggested to clients that expect or anticipate a rally, and that was because of that one-day rate of change above plus 10%. Yep. There's little nuances, little tricks that are out there, and everybody should really pay attention to this, because when the markets are really cascading to the downside, and you have a one-day rate of change above plus 10%, that would be the absolute worst time to try to jump on board that train and take a position. Instead, what you want to wait for is some type of counter trend move, which is what we've got going on today. So I just thought that I would throw that one out there.
Fantastic.
Because I did send that out before 6 o'clock at night, so the traders can anticipate, what they were going to see. When I was last on with you a couple weeks back, you had asked about the S&P 500 and how it was trading in major currencies or currencies just generally. So I thought we would really just kind of start there.
Absolutely.
If that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So, and it's really kind of apropos, because as you know, as we know, the S&P 500 made a new all-time high. Now we're looking at weekly time frame charts out here just to get rid of some of the noise. So we did make a new weekly all-time high last week inside the S&P 500 in terms of U.S. dollars. But we also made new all-time highs last week in terms of euros, Swiss francs, and Chinese yuan. And it's really important, folks, to understand how the market is trading in our major currencies, because that's when you have real bull runs. At the same time, if they all top at the same time, you've got to be careful about that, because that's when you can see some of the biggest moves to the downside. So this chart, weekly chart for the major currencies for the S&P 500. Any questions there?
No,
No. Okay, so if we take a look at how markets make major tops out there, and I've gone through this before, I sized this down just a bit so it's a little bit easier. And what I've got out here, the white lines represent the tops. Again, this is a monthly time frame chart that we're looking at, and so this helps us to identify globally what takes place when a major market top takes place, and that is that they're all making tops at the same time. When I say all, I'm referring to tops in Germany, tops in for Europe, tops in Asia. And here I've got the S&P, I've got the German DAX, and I've got the Hang Seng in Hong Kong. And so those white lines are identifying tops, the yellow lines are identifying bottoms. You can see the tops and bottoms typically form all around the same time period. I also have, so I've got the 2000 and the 2000 top, the 2007 top, and then I've got the 2020 top out there, the COVID 2020 crash. We can see that the Hang Seng actually topped out quite a bit earlier than that. But even though once the U.S. and in this case here the German DAX topped out, the Shanghai continued to move lower there. So it's just important to understand that, and I know that most of us don't really pay attention to what's going on overseas or what the meaning is or how things are trading in different currencies, but these are really how you are able to, at least myself, get my head wrapped around globally what's going on and what does that mean to the signals that we're looking at. Any questions about that, this chart?
No, please continue.
So now we were taking a look at a couple of different foreign markets. We were looking at the before we do that, actually, I want to take a look at major tops and how they're made out here. So this is my study, both of the Dow. So the Dow, I went back to 1896, but I've taken a look at all kinds of other instruments and all kinds of major tops out there. And the one cool thing is a couple of the patterns that I teach subscribers that I use on the show each and every day. One is referred to as a Rhodes momentum indicator top. TD9 count patterns out there. The buy the B point or sell the D point patterns. Wave number 7 signal. So it's basically 3 or 4. What's really interesting, and it really starts to get dangerous, is when there's 3 Rhodes momentum indicator tops, one for the daily, weekly, and monthly time frame. What that is, or what the equivalent of that is, and I'm not going to, don't think of it as a top, but just the energy that goes with it. And think about being inside a pool with a, kind of a blow-up rubber doll or ball or what have you, and you've got your legs that you're pushing down on it. You can usually hold down there for a little bit, and you get a little bit off, and then that ball comes flying out.
Totally.
That's basically what a Rhodes momentum indicator top is doing. It's stretched itself in one direction too far, and you're going to get the big splash, so to speak. So here's the Dow going back to 2007. So this is a 2007 top. We had a top both in the daily, weekly, and monthly. And when major tops form, not only are we going to do it in major markets out there, all 3 of these time frames must, at least in all the work that I've ever done, must have topping patterns out there. So now if we take a look at the S&P 500, which made that new all-time high last Wednesday.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, on Thursday, there was a bear sash candle that formed, and that confirmed to sell the D point top for the daily time frame for the S&P. When Friday ended, the center chart here, that confirmed a Rhodes momentum indicator top. We look at the monthly time frame chart, at least as of right now, November 24th, there is no top. The monthly chart is as bullish as can be, is big A to B equals CD pattern. Now, if a bearish reversal candle were to form by Friday, then we have a different story out there.
Okay.
We don't have that right now. We just simply have 2 topping patterns, one for the daily and one for the weekly. I'd see any questions about that chart?
No.
If we take a look at the DAX, here in the DAX formed last week. It formed a TD9 count top for its daily time frame. There is no top for the weekly time frame. There is no top for the monthly time frame. The DAX is suggesting that it wants to move higher.
Okay.
So again, this whole idea about major market tops out there, we would see topping patterns inside the DAX for the daily, the weekly, and the monthly time frame. We would see the same thing inside the S&P 500. We don't see that right now. So I would conclude no major top in place. Here's the Hang Seng, which Hang Seng negated its weekly Rhodes momentum indicator top last week. That was that pattern where, we push the ball down to the bottom. Shoot, that pattern got negated and tells us about a strong upward momentum move. It generated a new A to B equals CD pattern to the upside. The weekly time frame chart, then that A to B equals CD gets us up towards the 25,400 level. The monthly chart is all out bullish. So again, in the markets in Asia, they're saying no major market top. The markets in Germany, so we'll use that to cover Europe. They're saying no major market top out here. And even the charts, if you take a look at the S&P 500, they too are saying no major market top because they're losing the ingredients. The tops for the daily, weekly, and the monthly time frame. The UK, the FTSE, slightly different. The FTSE formed a Rhodes momentum indicator top for its daily time frame. Mm-hmm. The weekly time frame has a sell the D point, has a Rhodes momentum indicator top as well. And we're in wave number 7 on the monthly chart. Now, Jacob, in order for wave number 7, it's part of the Chapman wave. It's letter G out there. Okay. In order for that to confirm a top, you have to have a lower high. So you couldn't get that until the end of March out there. I still have more if you want, but
yeah, please, Steve, please stay right there, folks. We'll be right back with Steve Rhodes right after this break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Jacob Shoup. I am joined right now by Steve Rhodes. Steve is the author of Mastering Probability newsletter, and he is the host of the Trader's Edge show on live 11 a.m. Eastern time right here on TFNN. If you've never tried out Mastering Probability newsletter, you could do so risk-free. We have a 30-day money-back guarantee for all first-time subscribers. So for whatever reason, maybe the letter doesn't work for you, you can get your money back. I'm betting that it will. Steve, before we went to the break, we were taking a look at DAX, Hang Seng, SPX. Essentially no significant topping patterns there, but potentially one in UK's FTSE here.
Exactly. And now in the FTSE, on the daily time frame, although it's not really drawn in, you can visually see the A to B. It's in an A to B equals CD pattern to the downside. Okay. That's one pattern that it's in. And so what folks would be watching for here, if this is going to form a bottom, is some type of bullish reversal candle. If we get that, then that's going to form, it's going to confirm a buy. The D point pattern in this case here, it would be a Gartley buy point. Today was bar number 7 of its moves, so there's possibility that it could also form another pattern, and that would be the TD9 count bottom, and it could do that between tomorrow and Thursday out there. So I'll make sure that I cover that during the during my show from 11 to 12 for folks out there. The downside target right now for the FTSE is going to be the 85.79 level. That's coming from the weekly chart, and that's its oscillator and change line. So I won't go through the details about what that is, but that becomes the downside target. The Shanghai, it negated its TD9 count top last week. It's going to go target. So this is in rally mode for its daily and its weekly and its monthly time frame. Again, the whole point of take a look at the international charts, especially for their daily, weekly, and monthly, is because we know that when major tops or major bottoms are formed, they're going to be made basically together, maybe not exactly on the same day, but very close to it. We also know that when major tops are made, they will all have topping patterns. When I say they all, daily, weekly, and monthly, for each of those instruments too, whether it be the Shanghai that we're looking at or the S&P or the Dow or what have you. So if we come back and take a look at the S&P 500 for Friday, happened to also be two days to the downside. So this helps at the very bottom panel of this chart, Jacob, shows us consecutive moves higher and consecutive moves lower. In the major bull markets, we get these 2-bar knee-jerk reaction lows. Now that's what took place at least on Friday. We're getting the one-day rally. I question whether maybe this is really just more of a counter trend move at this point, and that we're going to experience some lower lows. I'm saying there's not a major bear market, major topping market. That doesn't mean the same thing as whether the S&P might rally or not, but you could expect or anticipate a 2-day rally. What's really interesting here, since December of 2023, we've not seen a 2-bar move to the downside. We've not seen a multi-month. We've only seen 1 month to the downside before the market resumes itself to the upside. That's for the S&P 500. Obviously, very strong market out here. And again, the monthly time frame chart, there is no topping pattern for it. So like I said, I'm not suggesting that the equity markets won't pull back. In fact, I believe that they will. There are 2 reasons why I believe that they will, or at least the S&P 500 is sticking with it. And those 2 reasons are the advanced decline oscillator. That's the very bottom portion of my screen on the left-hand side out there. That's measuring the advanced decline line, and it's taking the difference between the 39 and 19 period of that. That creates the oscillator. When it's below 0, it tells us that sellers are the ones that are in control. The second element that we put together with that is spot VIX index. Spot VIX index is traded above its 50-day exponential moving average. The 50-day exponential moving average is 1647. Jacob, I'm not sure where we're trading right now. Was it the 18s when I took this snapshot? But I'm pretty sure it's well above 1647. Those 2 conditions are perfect for a market that wants to move lower out here. So again, I want to make it clear, no major top, but I'm not saying that the markets won't move lower. Now, the counter trend rally that could last for a couple of days. Yes. The upside targets that I would have on it would be 60.62, 60.71, 60.87, and 61.05. These are all coming from these charts. The 60.71 is an example. You can see that as the top of the profile for both the 2-hour time frame and the 4-hour time frame. And oftentimes we get inside profiles, which both of those have. The 4-hour time frame chart has got a Rhodes Momentum Indicator bottom pattern that is in place out here. Once you get that, price should rally up towards the top of that profile around the 60.71 level, but we'll see overnight just how strong the markets are. Yeah. Now, for these charts, I came to the ES Mini. So those levels that I gave, we've moved off of the cash indices. We've moved into the futures markets because come 6 o'clock, that's what's going to be trading so people can, kind of keep their eye on the ball and understand what patterns are in place out here. Where could the downside target be for the ES Mini out there? So if I'm expecting, unless the spot VIX gets back below its 50-day, and combined with that advanced decline oscillator getting back above its 0 threshold level, I believe there's more downside. Where's the more downside? Well, we use these profile levels. Profiles help us identify where sellers and buyers are at, and that's the top and the bottom. So in the case of sellers, they're at 61.62 inside the ES Mini, and at 59.36 that's where the buyers are at. But there's a center line, and the center line tells us where both buyers and sellers believe there's fair value within that range. It's a pretty decent range. In this case here, that center line is is much closer to the bottom than it is to the top. And there's equal amount of sellers and buyers at that center line. So there's more buyers in the group between 59.36 and 59.92 than any place else on the chart. So that would really be the target to the downside for the ES Mini out there. If somebody was wondering about where are we seasonally speaking, this is a 97-year chart for the S&P 500. And what we can see here is if you look over in the very bottom right, you'll see the 3 months that the S&P typically struggles are February, May, and September. What that means, folks, and you can just take a look at it, is we are moving into one of the more favorable time periods this next couple of months, both March and April, for the S&P 500. Now, we can also take a look at the S&P 500. We happen to be in a post-election year. And so we can go back and take a look at post-election years. That provides us with 24 years. Those are all the ones with check marks out there. And I'm doing this and try to put the charts together. I know people will take snapshots of this so they can do some of their own work on their own systems out here. If the market was going to or is going to follow the presidential cycle, that means the year after the election out here, we are in a favorable seasonal cycle that should take us up in through the July timeframe. So those are the patterns that are in place there. If I switch real quickly and take a look at gold made a new all-time high today in terms of U.S. dollars, but not in any other major currency pairs. That's a caution sign. However, gold made a new all-time high today in terms of Iranian rial, Iraqi dinar, Syrian pounds, Saudi rial, Jordanian dinar. Jacob, my take on what this means is that peace talks over in the Middle East are not going that well.
I hear that.
There's some real caution out here. Lastly, I'll just say you this chart right here. This chart shows when Russia invaded Crimea, when they went into Ukraine, and when Hamas invaded Israel. It's when Hamas invaded Israel that gold truly took off. So if we ever do get a peace deal out there, you should expect a big premium to be pulled out of gold.
Steve, thank you so much. I love looking at these different movements in currency pairs. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Okay, Steve?
Take care.
Take care. Welcome back, everybody. This is Jacob Shoup. You're watching The Tom O'Brien Show. We were joined by Steve Rhodes. In fact, we are still joined by Steve Rhodes. I saw him looking at Palantir. I really want to talk about that with him. Of course, some of the really big equities we've been talking about recently, of course, are SMCI. We have calls on SMCI at 37. So this has really been eroding quite a bit today. Of course, you get down to a low of 50.26, get up back around that 54 level, and trading back down to 52.57. Of course, we are anticipating them reporting tomorrow. We talk a little bit more about that, of course. We were looking at Oklo, ended up not buying the puts in it. We were looking at puts for around $30 in the middle of March, trading up about 45 when we were looking at that. Cracked down on Friday to 38. I said, hey, let's just wait for a bounce back in this because I'm sure people will want to incorrectly buy Oklo. Well, you're down even further today. We actually would have been very close to the money on Oklo. And then, of course, Palantir itself, which is what I saw Steve looking at. Massive run up in this equity. You're trading, I think, what, Steve, like 600 PE or something on Friday. We cracked down. We're at 202 billion market cap still. What are you looking at with Palantir?
Yeah, no, it's definitely had a run. So I'm glad that you actually mentioned it and pulled me back on because it's got some cool charts, especially the patterns that I discussed. But first, to answer your question, the daily time frame chart for Palantir made that Rhodes Momentum Indicator top on February 19th. That's that pattern, where you're pushing it down inside the pool and finally it just explodes and it takes off. Here, now this is taken off to the downside. Wow. The very first thing that it did on the 20th, which was Thursday of last week, was a close below profile support. Close below profile support, it suggests that we have lower, especially if you have 2 consecutive days, which we got on Friday. And where the price is likely to target. So the nice thing about a TD9 count top, it's really important to understand where a price broke down and where a price broke out. And this is an objective way of using it. The TD9 count pattern is kind of like running a race. It's like running a 100-yard dash. Use up all your energy, and you'd think after running 100 yards, you'd still be good to go. No, you used up all your energy out there. And so in this case here, Palantir used up all its energy, and it looks like it's pulling back to that level where it catches its breath. and where it catches its breath is where it broke out from, and that would be 78.47. That's what the daily time frame chart would say. The weekly time frame chart, Jacob, shows a bearish engulfing candle for last week. That's the upper right-hand chart. That confirmed a Rhodes momentum indicator top for the weekly time frame. So you got two, both the daily and the weekly. So that suggests lower price. Now here, price is trading above profile. This is where I believe, in interpreting the message of the charts right now, that it's just a daily pullback to support that 78.47 area where I'd be watching. And you're going to want to watch as price gets to 80.91. So between that 78.50-ish and 80.91 is where we ought to see some support take place. Yep. And should that unfold, what we would be looking for is a bottom pattern on a 30-minute time frame. If we take a look at Palantir, this is where it's really kind of cool, because on a 30-minute basis, this stock loves these TD9 count patterns. If we take a look at a bottom that was made here, this is about 10:30 in the morning back on February 20th. It was a TD9 count pattern. What did price do? It rallied until it made a TD9 count top. It did that at 10 o'clock in the morning on February 21st. Then what does it do? It moves all the way down until it makes a TD9 count bottom at 11 o'clock in the morning today. Now, this TD9 count bottom and Rhodes momentum indicator bottom has proven to be very weak. Price has not been able to even take out the top of its profile at 94.90. So it looks to me like what's going to at least get tested here in the short term is that price is going to go down and go after the low from this morning at 11 o'clock. Now, it might not do it, between now and 4 o'clock, but tomorrow I'd be looking for this, and that's at the 89.30. There was 12 million shares that traded that day. So far today, Jacob, we're only 4.5 million. So price, I'm sorry for that 30-minute bar. So price is pushing lower with some lighter volume out here. But if it closes below that TD9 count bottom, that tells us that Palantir wants lower price, which we're already expecting based upon the daily and the weekly time frame chart. But the monthly chart is still strong like bull out here. So I think this is really setting up for a buy, and we just have to pay closer attention to it as price gets down towards that 80-ish area, 78 area. Sure. What questions do you have on these charts, if any, that I can help with?
So no questions on Palantir in particular. I was looking as well for a pullback kind of to that gap up. I think there was a lot of exuberance in this equity up until then. But I would also say sentiment-wise, and I think this kind of corroborates or at least agrees with your monthly look, I still think people are very bullish on this on the long term, right? I mean, these guys are so ingrained and are going to be even more so into our military-industrial complex. I think even with a reduction in military spending, as I was saying earlier in the show, I still think Palantir gets, what they're supposed to be getting from the military. I don't think Palantir gets cut in that way. So I think it's a very dominant stock, very dominant equity. What I am curious about is if you got anything on Oklo or SMCI. SMCI is interesting to me. I think they have a big fundamental kind of push going on, but Oklo has made, we were looking at this at 45, and I don't know if you've ever dealt with that, Steve. I'm sure you have, but you look at something, you're like, this thing has to go lower. I mean, none of this makes sense. The technicals are off, the fundamentals are off, the general sentiment is off, and you don't do it, and then you would have been so in the money, it hurts to think about,
Yeah. SMCI is kind of interesting.
Sure.
Right now, what it's doing is it's just consolidating inside its monthly profile, and that's that chart on the bottom left, and that's between the range, folks, of 25.67 and 59.33. What you're looking for there for this to really start moving to the upside is a close about 59.33 on a monthly basis. There is nothing in the weekly chart to suggest that won't eventually happen. Nothing that I see on the monthly or the weekly chart right now. The daily time frame chart as well. The daily time frame actually negated a TD9 count pattern, and it did it in one day. It did it on February. The pattern was confirmed on February 18th. The very next day, price closed above it, negates that signal. That tells us about a really strong upward momentum move. What's gotten in the way has been the top of that monthly profile, that 59.33 level. Yes, price got above that during the month out here, but it's really the body of the candle, folks, that is truly the essence of price out there. So right now, I am expecting and anticipating the SMCI will pull back to somewhere between the 46.08 to 49.22 level. And as it's doing that, that's where we'd like to switch over to the 30-minute time frame chart to look for some kind of a bottoming pattern. If there's going to be a market turn, folks, you're going to see it on the short-term time frame charts. You'll see it on a 10 or 15-minute, a 30-minute, a 60-minute. That's the benefit of using some intraday charts out there. You said OKLO, That's the other.
OKLO, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go to the OK Corral. This will take just a moment here to populate these charts. And what were you looking for there? You're looking for this to also pull back?
I'm expecting probably it's gone down so heavily right now. I'm actually kind of expecting a consolidation around this level, but I do think on a longer term, this comes back to one of its big breakout areas. So roughly around like 20s.
Okay. So the daily time frame has what I refer to as a profile change in trend. And that means that it busted, in this case here, it's a bearish profile change in trend to suggest lower price.
Yeah.
It busted through the bottom of that daily profile on Friday. We've had follow through today. Now this is going to be 6 days in a row to the downside. So it is getting ready to, to have some type of counter trend move at least.
Yeah.
And as long as price remains below 42.39, I would say it's a counter trend. I think where OKLO is going and where that next buy point is going to be around the 24.18 to 28.07 level. And that's the buy zone of the weekly profiles out there. So that's what I see.
Fantastic. Steve, thank you so much for hanging around and going through that. I appreciate that every time.
My pleasure.
We'll see you tomorrow at 11, okay?
You bet. Take care.